In this video, we're going to focus on naming ketones. So let's start with our first example. Let's say if you have a ketone that looks like this. What's the name of this particular ketone? Well, let's count the longest chain. There's only 3 carbons, and 3 carbons is associated with propane. Just to review, methane is for 1 carbon, 2 carbons is ethane, an alkane with 3 carbons is propane, butane is 4, pentane is 5, hexane is 6, heptane for 7, octane for 8, nonane for 9, decane for 10. Now, if you put the carbonyl group, let's say at the end, it's no longer a ketone, this becomes an aldehyde. So for a 3 carbon chain, to have a ketone, it has to be in the middle. So therefore, you don't have to say it's 2-propanone, this is simply propanone. The common name for this particular ketone is called acetone. Now let's say if you have a ketone that looks like this. What's the name of this particular ketone? Now it helps to draw the structure. So we have a CH3 attached to a carbon that has a carbonyl group that's connected to 2 CH2s in a straight chain attached to another CH3. So as you can see, we have a total of 5 carbon atoms. So 5 carbon atoms is associated with pentane, but instead of saying pentane, we're going to replace the E and add ONE. So it's pentanone, and the ketone is on carbon 2. It could be on carbon 2 or on carbon 3. So this time we got to specify that it's on carbon 2, so it's called 2-pentanone. Try this one. CH3, CH2, CH, Br, CH2, CH2, CO, CH3. So let's convert this into a line structure. Notice that we have 7 carbon atoms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. On carbon 2, we have the carbonyl group. And on carbon 5, not on 4, but on 5, we have the bromine atom. Over here, this is a CH2, that's carbon 4. It already has 4 bonds, so it has no space for a bromine atom. But on carbon 5, it's a CH. Since carbon can only form 4 bonds, it has a space for the bromine atom. Now let's go ahead and name this particular ketone. Feel free to pause the video and try this example. Now we need to count from right to left and not left to right because we want the ketone functional group to have the lowest number. So that's why we need to count it in that direction. The ketone has more priority than the bromine atom. So this is going to be 5 bromo, and the ketone's a carbon 2, so dash 2 dash. A 7 carbon chain is heptane, but instead of saying heptane, we're going to say it's heptanone. So that's how you can name this particular organic compound. So now let's move on to our next example. So what if you have an aldehyde and a ketone at the same time? What can we do to name this particular example? You need to know that the aldehyde has more priority than the ketone, and the aldehyde is always at the end. The ketone is somewhere in the middle of the chain. So instead of saying hexane, the parent name is going to be hexanal, since we have an aldehyde. And you don't have to say 1-hexanal because it's always at the end. Now we do have a ketone on 5. A ketone as a substituent is known as oxo. So this is 5-oxohexanol. Let's try another example. Go ahead and name this compound. So which group has more priority? The ketone or the carboxylic acid? Which one has higher priority? The carboxylic acid is going to be part of the parent name. It has more priority than the ketone. So we're going to have to assign the carboxylic acid a number of 1. So the ketone group is on number 4. And it's the substituent in this molecule, so this is going to be 4-oxo. And instead of saying hexane, it's going to be hexanoic acid, since we have a carboxylic acid. And so that's how you can name this compound. Now what about some cyclic ketones? Let's say if we have this particular ketone. A 5-carbon ring is known as cyclopentane, but with a ketone, this is simply called cyclopentanone. So now what if we have a ketone and let's say a methyl group attached to it? How can we name this particular ketone? The ketone is automatically assigned a number of 1. So this is going to be called 2-methyl cyclohexanone because we have a 6-carbon ring. Now what about this one? What's the name for this particular ketone? Should we count this way or this way? Now, either way we count it, we're going to have a 3 and a 4. If we count it the other way, the Cl is going to be on carbon 3, Br is going to be on carbon 4. So the numbers are the same. However, B comes before C, so let's assign bromine number 3 and then Cl number 4. So it can not only be in alphabetical order, but an increase in order. So to name it, B comes before C, so it's going to be 3-bromo dash 4 dash chloro cyclopentanone. Let's try another example. Consider this one. How can we name this particular ketone? So because there's 2 ketone functional groups, this is going to be called a dione. Now, if the first one is assigned a number of 1, the other one will be 4. So this is going to be called 1,4 cyclo, not penta, but hexa, since there's 6 carbons in a ring. So cyclohexane, and then dione. Now what if we have a cyclic ketone with an alkene? So in this particular example, the ketone is going to have more priority than the alkene. So the alkene's on carbon 2. So there's 2 ways in which we can name it. We could say it's 2-cyclopentene. So the 2 is for the double bond, and then -one. We know the ketone is on carbon 1. Or we can say it's cyclopent 2-ene 1 one. So this specifies where everything is. It tells you that the ketone is on carbon 1, the alkene is on carbon 2. It's between 2 and 3, but you pick the lower of the two numbers. How can we name this particular ketone? Which one has more priority, the alcohol or the ketone? Ketones have more priority than the alcohol, so we're going to give the ketone the lower number. We're going to count it from left to right. Now, the OH group as a substituent is called hydroxy. So this is 3-hydroxy-2-pentanone. What about this example? So we have 4 carbons. The ketone has higher priority than the amine. So this is going to be 3-amino-2-butanone since we have a 4 carbon chain. Try this example. So once again, the ketone has higher priority than the ether and the alkyl halide. So we have to count it from left to right so that we can have a 3 on a ketone as opposed to a 4. So we have a 5-bromo and a 2-methoxy. This is called methoxy. If you see OCH2CH3, that's ethoxy. So B comes before M, so it's going to be 5-bromo. We need to alphabetize it. And then 2-methoxy dash 3-hexanone, since we have a 6-carbon chain. And that's it for that example. So here's the last example for today. Go ahead and try this one. So we need to identify the longest chain, and it's not 6 carbon atoms. It's actually 8 carbons. So we have a methyl on 4 and a methyl on 5. So it's going to be 4,5-dimethyl since we have 2 of them. The ketone's on carbon 2, so it's 2-octanone since we have an 8-carbon chain. So that is it for this video. Hopefully you found it useful, and now you know how to name ketones. So thanks for watching.